You also have an executive summary, and you have a PowerPoint. And what we did in this PowerPoint was try to bring this budget to life and really talk about what are the components of this budget. So we're going to run through this. I have no idea who's controlling this slide, so all right, there's a click over there. All right, and what I will do is I'll call on different members of the school board as we need to go through. And this was put together, as I said, in conjunction with the board and the SAU. So let's hop forward there, Nicole. Thank you so much. Jess, can you talk to the board mandate?
Sure. So part of what we wanted to help educate folks on is, as we've been working on educating our own board last several years, is what our mandate is as a board. And so we wanted to just make clear for folks that New Hampshire law requires every district to provide adequate public education to all resident students. Federal and state laws require services to any qualified student. No matter where the student attends school, we are required to provide for their services. All students in grades K through 12, and sometimes up to the age of 21, are entitled to these services. Requirements are not optional, and they cannot be reduced by local vote.
Great, thanks Jess. Let's hop to the next slide. All right, so it's really important when we look at this big budget all together to say what components can we change as a school board, what things can we not change. So this is to talk about what is outside of local control. So special education services, as we've talked about, they're required by federal and state law. The district must provide services based on individual student needs. Tuition costs. So we have existing contracts that are still in effect. Those contracts are with Bartlett for middle school and with Kennett for high school. Those drive our costs. Those are costs that we don't get to change year to year as a school board. Those are costs that we've already committed to paying. Capital project obligations. There's a new Kennett Roof project. It's a great example. We're going to use it a couple times tonight to talk about, like, we already were under agreement that that was something that we would pay for under a capital improvement plan. So here we are this year. That's increased the budget for next year because we have an expected output that we have to have. So costs are established by previously approved contracts and cannot be reduced, right? One of the things that we want to talk about is there's potential implications on the Kennett contract under consideration. So the contract that we've negotiated as a school board changes that, and that's really important, that we've changed the terms for the next contract so that we don't have as much variability. One thing that this board has been working really hard on this year is saying, what can we change and what can we not change? How can we hear the town asking us to be more collaborative, to be more fiscally responsible, and to be more conservative in our spending? And it's something that all of us as taxpayers in the town of Jackson are really committed to. How do we support education in our school, and how do we do it in a reasonable way? Another thing that for us to really understand is that these costs must be funded regardless of local budget preference, right? So at the last meeting, I said, somewhat caustically, but pretty honestly, guess what? If we don't have a school, we still have kids. We need to pay for their education. We need to pay for the services to support their education. It's really important that we understand that. So one thing that I think that we all, the people who are in this meeting tonight, can understand is that our budget for our school district is not the budget for our grammar school. So let's hop into the next slide. In fact, our budget is this. So this is the 2027 proposed budget. It's comprised of these various pieces. Jackson Grammar School, which is 40, we'll round up, let's see if I can do it the whole way, 42% of the budget. High school tuition, 21.5%. Special education is 15.3% of that budget. So when you get your tax bill, it is spread across all of these things. Middle school tuition, 9.4%. Buildings and maintenance and SAU services. So that's what's part of this budget. We're going to come back to this. Let's move forward, Jess. And you all have these as well. Jess, if you want to jump in at any time, just
Yes.
Okay, so one of the things we wanted to bring was what were the changes from the 2024 budget to the 2027 budget. So special ed, that's a really big thing. Special ed increased 25%. Remember, special ed, inside of our control, outside of our control, outside of our control, right? So here's a major budget change that we don't get to stipulate if it happens or not. What we do as a town is we pay it. And we pay it because we want to support students to have access to that education. So that's legally mandated. Increase in student needs and out-of-district costs is what's driving that. Middle school tuition has gone up 48, we round 50%. Why? Increase in enrollment and increase in the cost per pupil. So we pay a cost per pupil of what the middle school cost is. If that cost goes up, we pay more. Outside of our control, right? But that's raised, that's increased since 2024. SAU services, up 39%. Escalating salaries and benefits, health insurance, additional positions, including transition of 2 Conway technology staff to SAU, and many other things. I wanted to share to you all that if you're talking about the budget changes between 24 and 27, and you're going to try to put in 2 bullet points, I'm not going to capture them all, right? What we're trying to do is share a flavor of why there are these changes. Buildings and grounds, those are up 39%. JHS and Whitney facility maintenance and capital reserves. High school tuition.
Wait, hold on,
Yeah.
Mike, I just want to highlight, so building and grounds, let's be clear, that refers to specifically our infrastructure here in Jackson,
Yeah,
as opposed to anywhere else.
absolutely. Yep, our infrastructure here in Jackson. High school tuition up almost 19%. Increase in cost per pupil at Kennett and significant decrease in enrollment from all sending towns. So if there's decrease in enrollment from all sending towns, then the cost per pupil that is charged to the kids who are going is going to increase. This is from a contract that we've been in for how long now? Anyone? 20 years? Okay. Not something that this board got to make a choice on, but is something that this board is looking at when we think about what are these next contracts on the table. Jackson Grammar School operations sit at up only 9% if we're rounding. So what that means is when you look at that kind of change, that's actually a pretty steady cost. It's pretty remarkable that when we talk about Jackson Grammar School, that they have been holding steady in their costs, especially when you look at adjusted for inflation, it's effectively flat. So that's how those numbers work, like in what's in the red, what's in the orange, and what's in the green. Lower enrollment has not resulted in cost savings, okay? That's somewhat of an obvious statement. We have the same infrastructure in teachers, we have lower enrollment. Our cost per pupil has gone up, but our cost to run Jackson Grammar School and have great staff and have all the things that we need to have, so that as for whichever kids we have, and hopefully as more and more kids come here, are going to remain consistent. Jackson operations have the lowest percentage increase, despite being 42% of the budget. And one of the reasons we're really going to hammer on this is what we all see is we all see the school, right? And it's like, that school is costing a lot of money. And what I want us all to do is start thinking about, this is the Jackson School District budget. This is not the Jackson School budget. Anybody from the board want to add? Let's go, next one. All right, specific changes from last year to the budget that we are proposing. High school tuition, $250,000 increase. Pretty significant. So that's something that we want to talk about, because right now, Jackson's going to start paying $38,600 per high school student. And Mike and Amy, you're welcome to jump in as I talk about this to make sure that I do this right, versus the $29.8 in the 2026 budget. And the reasons are because we have funding completed that we were getting returned to us, declining enrollment, shifts in towns' equalized values. So this is all, it's not a fixed system. This is all fluid. That's the way that contract works, right? We have fewer students, we gotta pay more, we gotta all contribute to what the system is. Kennett roof replacement and more. So all of that together means that over 1 year, we're looking at that kind of a jump. I wanna stipulate that the way we set up the contract that we are putting to a warrant article will not have that kind of a jump. Because we were really focused on negotiating a fixed amount that would cap us, so we weren't as exposed to this. Because we saw these fluctuations coming, and as a board, we said, this is not fiscally responsible. This is not what the town is asking us to do. We can't be exposed to this big of a jump for this small of a town. So how do we change that? We're gonna negotiate a different deal. Let me tell you, it has not been easy. This board has worked so hard in front of you all and constantly in non-publics, making sure that we're doing the right thing, crossing the T's, dotting the I's. It's been an incredible effort, and Jessica Della has gone to the mat at a level that I've never seen anybody. And we are so grateful for her leadership through this to get here. And that's because we don't want to be in this situation. SAU services, change 23K, building and grounds 17, JGS ops. That's not changing. Middle school tuition, down, special ed, down. So last year, special ed went up really big. Again, it changes and it fluctuates based on what the needs are. And we go right along with it, as we should. Comments?
I just want to highlight, so for the last slide, because for the first time I looked at this, it took me a moment to just really comprehend the information, but that last slide,
Should we go back?
yeah, maybe pop back just for a
Yeah.
second. Micah touched on it, but it covers a budget change from 24 to 27, and now we're on the 26 to 27.
Yeah.
So just to be aware and of what those numbers are looking like, and I just want to flag that because it changed some conversations when I realized we're looking at 3 years
So this
versus
is,
one.
exactly, this is over 3 years, just to show what are the trends, what are we looking at, and then this is the 1 year if we flip forward and forward. Okay, great, let's hop forward. So, one of the things we really want to talk about is how fiscally responsible,
We have some questions.
are we doing questions?
Well, yeah.
My question is going to be, how do you want to handle questions?
Yeah,
Great,
what
thank
I
you, Jerry.
what I was going to say is, if it's possible to hold your questions till the end, we want to answer all of them. But she did work hard on putting this together, and it throws people off when they're trying to get through the presentation. So if
There's
there's
only
clarifying,
two more slides, and then let's go into questions, we can come back to
So
slides.
you're going to question for each individual aspect of it.
we'll answer anything. We'll go back to whatever you want. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, so what we really want to talk about is the fiscal responsibility that's happening with Jackson Grammar School. So here you can see what the budget is for 24, 25, 26, 27. And if you look at that, that's pretty incredible. That we, again, operations increased 8.7 over 4 years, effectively flat with inflation. And you can see, indeed, the consistency. And that's really a testament to, I've seen the grammar school work with the SAU on where do we cost share, and that's also in this information. How can we get more effective? Erin is now a PE teacher, right? Like, how are we gonna how can we make sure that we're saying where, how can our teachers be giving more? How do we share these responsibilities? And our principal and our staff are really aware of the fact that they want to make sure that this school works for our town. And they are working constantly on that. Let's hop to the next slide. One of the things that we have done this year for the first time, and as someone who is ending 6 years in the school board, and this is one of my last meetings that I hope to give to you all, is to use this format next year. Because I hope it's really helpful, and we'd love to hear if it's helpful to see these things like this. Is to say, here's how we cost share, because this is a question that comes up. How do you cost share? Do more of this, make sure you're doing it. Well, here we go, right? Here's transportation spread across Jackson Grammar School, Bartlett is JVS, Kent High School, the Whitney, right? We started talking about what is this staff time? There are people who work at the Jackson Grammar School, but their time is actually allocated not only for the grammar school. How do we demonstrate that to the town? So you can see how this gets pushed out. So that's a total that in reality, there are several of these different positions and several of these different services that 72% sit at Jackson Grammar School, but 28% sit outside of it. And in fact, that means that Jackson Grammar School resources extend beyond the Jackson Grammar School. And actually from a staff perspective, 6 staff with shared costs, 31% of their costs support services outside the grammar school. It's pretty big. Let's hop to the next slide. So if we think of the donut graph, I don't know why these slides are really there. Anyway, there's some stuff missing at the bottom. But so this is an updated donut. So what we've done here is we've taken the demonstration of the budget, and we've come back and we said, if you look at this cost sharing, what has changed? So this is what we believe is a more accurate way to project this. We wanted to share both because this is a new way to estimate the cost share. This is a new initiative that the Finance Committee started looking at because it was important for us to say we want to get clear on this. We want to get clear on how we are spreading these costs. So when you do that, actually Jackson Grammar School operations has dropped, and what's increased is we've shown how transportation is not just the grammar school, it is for the high school and the middle school and the grammar school. So this is what we wanted to share at that point. Justin, you want me to say something?
No.
Okay. Okay. Because I took it. Okay, let's hop forward. Oh, it's not on the copy. Oh, it's cut off on the copy. Oh, fun. Okay, we'll come back to that. So the key takeaways, Jackson Grammar School is really fiscally responsible. Operating costs are flat. Many budget drivers are outside local control. Special ed is legally mandated. Tuition is set by our current contracts. Capital projects that we cannot change. They're all part of tuition contract obligations. Another thing to share is that the board is planning ahead for changes in enrollment, contracts, and facilities to keep finances stable and to avoid sudden financial shocks. So a sudden financial shock, again, is one of the things that we've worked so hard to negotiate the contracts that we have for high school. It's also why we are looking at elements about open enrollment. So we wanted to give you this presentation, and what I would love to know, just random poll, show of hands, was this helpful as a way to start understanding the budget beyond just the spreadsheet? If you don't vote, but if anybody like it? Awesome, that's really helpful. Thank you. All right.
Micah, thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, so we'll turn it over to questions, and what we're going to ask you to do is to come up to the microphone and let us know who you are, so that Melissa can take good notes, so that we have questions and answers for folks who aren't here. But before we get into the questions, I do just want to point out that there are a couple of things in here, and you've probably already found some of them, but for those who are looking, we have tried over the years to create some documents for consistency. You'll see there's an executive summary in here that, thanks to the SAU, that was crafted along with Nicole. Mike put this presentation together. There are also frequently asked questions. So any questions that have come in, we've tried to put them in here and to answer them so that people have them. And of course, we'll also answer them in real time or even after tonight. And then you'll see the budget, which we'll go through, and a couple of things that you can mention. But with that, I will turn it over to you all to ask us questions. And I do just want to highlight the hard work of James and Melinda, who are our finance committee, who worked hard to put this budget together as well. So, let's do it.
So, I'm Jerry Doherty. I think it was the second slide. It was the slide that had this one here. Now, the board is claiming that there's costs in here that it can't control. Could you, again, state which costs you're saying that the board can't control? This slide.
Jerry, I think the word you're looking for is not claiming, but explaining.
Well, you made the claim that those costs up there that you can't control. I'm wondering which of the costs the board is claiming you think you can't control.
So one of the conversations we've had a lot, and I'll start this, is about special education. There are a number of factors and actors outside of this board who make the decisions about special education. So for example, and Pam obviously is the expert here, but when a student is identified, there's a team that makes that decision. Our board does not make it. You asked the question, I just want to finish.
You're not answering the question. I'm asking.
If you could, Jerry, just give me a chance to answer it, and then you can answer another, you can ask another one. So those decisions are made outside our purview. We don't have a lot of control over where a student is placed or what those costs add up to be, because a lot of them are mandated also by the law. So Pam, if I'm misstating something, please let me know. So that's part of what we're referring to.
My question was, you made the claim that those costs up there that the board can't control. I'm asking you to clarify which those costs are on this slide.
So I'm starting by saying special education is one of the costs that we do not have a lot of control over.
Well, I'm sorry, Jessica, you made the claim that you had no control over it, and you're implementing that, I guess, you have no responsibility to those costs?
Oh, we have full responsibility, which is why we're here tonight. So just to be clear, we're here tonight because we think we are responsible for this budget. And we are responsible for the staff that we hire and that we oversee. What we're trying to point out to folks is that there are decisions we don't get to make, but we are responsible for. And it's one of the things that we spend a lot of time on. And I will also invite my fellow board members to comment, because I think
Yeah.
this
But
would
my
be.
question specifically, which of those costs are you said special education, are there any other costs up there that the board is claiming you don't have much control over?
I'd like to address this. First of all, to just marvel at the fact that having served on the school board as long as you have, Jerry, that you could be confused on this issue. But that's
There's
not
a question,
really.
which of those costs you're
Hey,
confused?
Jerry, one person talking at a time, please.
Jerry, we're gonna let you ask questions, but you can't badger the board, okay? So I'm just gonna caution you, okay?
You're badgering my question. It's a simple question.
Let him answer the question, please.
Jerry, I believe that you're familiar with the high school contract.
I am familiar with the high school contract.
All right, and so what control do you imagine that this school board has about the cost of the high school contract?
Not only did the school boards over the years have lots of implement.
No,
but
this school board, Jerry.
The town
This
decided
school
to
board.
enter into this. That's direct control over the result in those expenses.
Jerry,
You
this,
frame it as having no control. I frame it as absolute control.
well,
It's a matter of how you
Okay.
frame it.
All right,
Thank you.
so, thank you.
I appreciate your question. I think that the source of the question is obviously not to gain any clarity. So I think that we all in this room have gotten the point that you're trying to make.
No, so for special education, for instance, this is my claim on that, is that the board has direct control over that. The board could choose to spend a lot more money than it did, given the options that it did choose how to facilitate the special education that we have. The board could have chosen, could have had control to spend a lot more money, could have hired its own people to do the services. There's lots of options that the board does have. You have absolute control over these things. The SAU 9 services, you have absolute control over. If you participated in the SAU 9 meetings, you recognize that you have significant control over the SAU salaries and benefit costing us. The SAU 9 board has been going through that business plan year after year after year, and you guys don't participate in that, and you claim you have no control over it, but you do. I'm saying you're framing these expenses you don't have control over.
Jerry,
I'm claiming you
Wait, hold
do.
on a second. All right.
Jerry, you know that those things are not true. You know, for example, you know
Jay,
that those things are not
You
true.
make your own claims.
Perhaps you have forgotten since you were a school board, but I doubt that. I know that you know that those things are not true. You know that the high school contract was signed 20 years ago, and you know the term of the high school contract continues on, and you know that the terms of the high school contract are not under the control of this school board. You also know that SAU services contracts are multi-year contracts. And you also know that the numbers that Micah projected and presented are under multi-year contract terms. Though, what that means, Jerry, as a business owner, I know that you know that what that means is that those terms are fixed and those are not malleable. So when Micah says that they're not under the control of this board, that's exactly accurate. And I know that you know that. We've all heard you make the point and express
So,
grievances
is this a
against
hearing
the
for you guys to
school
hear
board.
public comments or not?
We're
We've
here
heard
to
your
answer questions.
grievances before, and we don't need
Have
to
I
hear your
exhausted my time
grievances
period
again.
allotted for this section of the?
Yes,
of the
you have
public hearing?
exhausted your time period, so
Very
please,
good.
let's turn it
I
over to
find it
someone else.
fascinating that this board doesn't understand the difference between fixed costs and that it has control over those fixed costs. That's amazing.
James, thank you for that clarification. And one other thing I just want to highlight is that,
Hold on,
oh,
Micah has-
yeah. Melinda,
I just want to clarify one
Yeah.
more thing. I think there's only been one meeting that no one from this board has been to as far as the SAU meetings go, if you go back and look at the records. Nicole goes to every single meeting, so we are participating, and lots of times there are two of us there. But we can't always be at every meeting, but we do make sure at least one of us is there.
And also, I think members of the public may be much more familiar than Jerry apparently is, that the composition of the SAU 9 board makes Jackson a minority voting member. And so, just in
Absolutely not
terms,
true, James. We have
so
equal
just
voting
in
members,
terms-
Connolly and Bartlett.
just in
Jerry,
terms
he has the floor now.
just in terms of the way that the board works, by definition, Jackson is a minority member, and that dilutes the voice that the community has to exercise through the SAU 9. Now, that doesn't change the fact that we're a part of the SAU 9, despite what Jerry seems to think, and it doesn't change the fact that this board, just like every board in Jackson,
This,
has worked hard with the SAU 9 and collaboratively with SAU 9. I understand that Jerry has very strong and passionate feelings about this, but that doesn't change the facts.
Okay, so we are here tonight to, excuse me, Jerry, please stop interrupting the meeting. We are here tonight to talk about the budget, and if we have questions about the budget and we want to talk about them, we want to make sure that everyone is heard. You are welcome to follow up however you'd like, Jerry, as you well know. Yes, Peter?
For a second. And you guys wait for a second. Good evening, everybody. Peter Benson, Jackson. Just a point of order, this is a budget hearing, so the body has the ability to amend any number on the floor. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's not what was stated at the beginning of the meeting, just so you know. You said this is a budget hearing, we can't change anything. This body has the ability to change numbers at this hearing. This is our only recourse, except for the annual meeting, to change numbers if we so fit. I'm not gonna do that. I just wanted everybody to be clear that we can do that at this meeting.
Thank you for the clarification.
Secondly, that budget presentation was excellent. I would have loved to have gotten this sooner. I understand how things go. It was also the first time I've ever received a budget presentation that was obviously biased. Usually budgets present numbers and they give you the facts and the numbers. They don't say this is fiscally responsible. They don't say this is fiscally irresponsible. I just want to get on record that every board member here is behind this budget. And you're unanimous in your support of this budget.
Are you asking us to answer that right now?
Yes.
I'm behind this budget.
Okay, I just want to know.
Yes.
Because it was a presentation by one board member, you're all behind this budget. Very good, thanks.
Yes.
That's all I want to know.
We do want to just highlight that, yes, actually the power is in the people here, so you are welcome to make the changes that you feel are necessary. Yes, Penny?
Penny Borak. I love a quick, my kids are done and gone out of this wonderful school, but I would love a quick update and snapshot in terms of the number of kids, teachers' kids that attend, which I understand are at no charge. Also, if there are any students' tuition in, and also if the grades are being combined, if Erin is officially a teaching principal. You know, obviously, if you take 7 grades divided by 4 kids a grade is the average. So that's what I'm getting at, is how are we combining classes? Are we combining classes? You know, obviously the trend of population of students is going down. And what other?
Okay, so we'll go ahead and answer you, Penny, and your questions. We tried to get them down, but if we missed something, you let us know. And we do want to highlight the executive summary as well and go over some of the actual numbers, if folks will allow us to do that. So, but first we'll turn to answering some of the questions. So,
Do you want us to repeat them, Erin, or?
Yeah.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
the number of staff kids right now is at 4. We have 0 students tuitioned in right now. I'm not technically a teaching principal, but I do teach PE with colleagues, and fulfill other roles. I'm also certified as a special educator as well. Right now, we have a configuration of a K-1-2, a 3-4, a 5-6, with 3 classroom teachers teaching those. We also have another regular ed teacher that teaches math and assists in the 5-6. Does that answer your question?
So we have 3 full-time teachers?
4.
4 full-time. Okay.
and there are answers to those also written out on page 9. So we'll go, I think I saw a question here, and come over to you. Or we'll start with him and then come over to you. Go ahead.
Jerry Dougherty, you listed the tuition cost per student for all schools that you're offering, except for Freiburg. Why did you leave that out?
Where are you looking?
Yeah, where is,
The cost per student on page 8, I'm sorry, page 8.
So the reason for that there is that you're saying on page 8 of the executive summary. This is about our current contracts. not about the contracts that are on the table to be.
Yeah, we don't
voted.
have a contract with
Do you
Freiburg
know
right
what the cost per student will be at Freiburg?
Yeah, that is actually in here. We presented on that,
On page 9.
page 9. Thank you.
And what is that? Do you know?
Let's see.
It's actually not on page 9.
Oh, sorry.
The contract terms are on page 9,
Yeah.
and actually because this is not, you can pull it up.
Mike, do you have that number, do you know? We have it from previous presentations. If you'll hold 1 second, we'll get it for you.
You mean you're offering an option and you don't know what it costs?
We do
We
know
want
what
to
it
make
costs.
sure we represent what he's asking. Thank you.
790 per pupil.
Thank you.
What's that? Yes.
So the tuition cost for Kennett High School in 26-27 is $38,804. And the town of Jackson will get to vote on a contract proposal for both Kennett High School and for Freiburg Academy. The projected cost for tuition for the Freiburg Academy is
$790.
$2,690.
Okay. And are other districts, sending districts in SAU 9 offering the option of Freiburg?
We don't know, we're not butt tracking everything they're doing.
Does the
Is-
superintendent know?
Yeah.
So if it's relevant to the budget here, it's not, then we can say this for, we have many meetings, additionally February 24th, so.
Bartlett and Eaton have held their public hearing and have voted to move a warrant to the ballot in March for only a Kennett High School contract. Those are the only two that have held their hearing so far, other than Jackson tonight.
Thank you.
And James's cost per student for Kennett was the current contract, not
Yes.
projected.
Right.
Good evening. Keith Evans, Jackson. Mike, I appreciate your presentation, it was very thorough. The only thing, you did breeze by some of the costs of why the high school is what it is next year and why. And I think you said there was a new roof being put on the building. And again, I appreciate you guys, your diligence in negotiating new contracts. You know, the contract we are currently is absurd, the fact that we have to pay, you know, $130,000 for a roof on a building, which we have no control over. But are there any costs going forward, any foreseen costs that building? I know it's not a very aging building, but it seems to be there's lots of issues with the building. Anything that, you know, we as taxpayers, you know, before we just, you know, write our blank check to the SAU, maybe there's costs that we need to know about before we, you know, get into this contract. And, you know, again, the sudden increase is, it's funny that it comes right when we're about to leave we might be leaving the contract. So it feels like they're trying to hit us with money before we walk out the door.
So just to, thank you, Keith. So just to kind of orient the audience to what I think Keith is referring to. When the current contract with the Conway School Board to send our kids to Kennett High School was signed, that was at the time that Kennett High School was being built. And so Jackson was among the communities that took a bond and paid off that bond for the construction of the building. But also as part of that contract, the Conway School Board, who operates and owns Kennett High School, had the right to make capital improvements to Kennett High School as they saw fit. And so this is a Conway School Board, not an SAU 9 school board function. So members of Jackson's school board or community are not represented on the Conway School Board. Interestingly, there is a capital improvement fund that is jointly funded by all of the sending schools. But in this case, what Keith is referring to is our high school tuition costs that were contractually obligated, and so outside of the control of the Jackson School Board, went up about $250,000 in this year's budget compared with last year's budget. And in digging into the explanation of why, the lion's share of that is related to a roof construction or repair or renovation project that the Conway School Board undertook for Kennett High School. The funding for that project, as I was given to understand it, was not from the jointly funded fund that all of the sending high schools established when the contract was established, but rather was from a separate fund that the Conway School Board administers by itself. And then each of the sending towns was itemized. So for example, I just noticed that Albany's high school costs, just little Albany, their tuition costs went up almost $150,000. And so their budget projection is that their budget is going to go up almost 15% from last year to next year. So to Keith's point, I think that it's really important for this community to be aware of that exposure. There's, first of all, the $104,000 that was spent on the roof project was not something that the Jackson School Board participated in decision-making about. It's not something that the community has a say about, but we are obligated under that contract to pay for that. And so I think it's relevant for the community to think about that in any forward-going contracts with any school. One of the nice things, I think that this is not part of the budget meeting, but it is something for the community to think about in any forward-going contract. Thank you.
Yes, please do.
Just want some clarity on the ins and outs of the increase in high school tuition, which is not just related to the roof.
Correct. So there was a roof section that was done, multiple roof sections that were done nearly the complete Kennett High School roof. Happened last year and will be hopefully finished up this year. The amount that had been contributed to the tuition trust, the facilities trust fund for the high school was significantly underfunded. It was $55,000 a year for 20 years, which is about $1.1 million over 20 years. So the cost of the roof exceeded that. A couple of years ago, there was a warrant put out, a bid put out, and the expense from the General Maintenance Trust Fund, which is a trust fund that Conway contributes to solely, and then when things are expended, the funds that are used from there, depending on which building they're used at, are allocated to Conway and any sending members of that district. Another thing is also the grant funding. Conway received a significant amount of ESSER funds, which is all COVID relief funds. And I think it was about $4 million over the last few years. So part of the tuition is a credit for actuals in prior years. So some of the expenses for regular operating staff were able to be supplemented by that grant funding. So up until this most recent tuition contract, there was surplus that was credited back to each of the districts for about $2 million for 3 consecutive years. This year, because that funding ended and then there was the addition of the roof project, that number went the other way and nearly broke even. So yes, from a far lens, it definitely seems like that changed, but it's not just pointed at the roof. There are multiple factors there.
thanks for clarifying, Michael. That was really helpful. One other thing that I forgot to mention is that the tuition cost per student at Kennett High School does fluctuate according to the enrollment at Kennett High School. So if the enrollment were to go up, the price per student would likely disproportionately go down. And what's really happened when I moved to this valley around 15 years ago, the enrollment at Kennett High School was around 1,300 students. Last year, the enrollment was just over 620 students. Next year, it's projected to be maybe even below 600, so it's really diminished year after year. And that has the opposite impact on our price per student. It tends to push the price per student up. And that was another factor that Michael pointed out to us that resulted in our price per student this year being around $38,000.
Yeah, similar, there's facilities to maintain, or, facility overhead costs that as enrollment goes down, those costs remain the same.
Hi, I'm Michael Porteous. First off, a comment. I think when we did the initial high school options work, I believe in September of '24, the ESSER funding completed, correct? Mike, it was around September of '24? It's just taken a while to come through the system, right?
Yeah, so it ended, yes, September 24.
September 24. Yeah, so that is what it is. I think, and maybe to your point, just again, my understanding of it, and please correct me, is the existing contract had to do a lot with equalized value as well as average daily students, or whatever the right term is, ADMA. Our ratio of equalized value to ADMA has gotten worse over time, i.e. we have a higher percentage of equalized value and a lower percentage of ADMA, which I believe has driven up the cost per pupil that we have in the current contract to the 38.6 that was up there. With the new contract, since we just did the Freiburg one, instead of 38.6K, you just stated the Freiburg number. Could we restate the Freiburg number of the new contract as well as the Kennett number we'd expect under the new contract roughly from what we presented a month ago or a couple months ago?
I have the number stated, but I'm not sure if the calculations we did on that were correct with respect to the.
Well, why don't you do the Freiburg? I think we have a number that,
Yeah,
I think
I have Freiburg.
for Kobe today.
Okay, yeah, Freiburg, 26,790 per pupil. And that's based on their tuition plus 20%.
And Amy, am I correct? We're looking at for Conway between these two numbers that you shared today?
I mean, yeah, if you're just going base tuition, or are you going with all of the other tuition? Because the Freiburg number that you gave was without additional
Without cost, without transportation and special education.
Right, so with that Freiburg is the 26,790 and Kennett High School is 24,129. That's with all of the add-ons.
With all of the add-ons?
Aren't
So what
included in the
What are these numbers that you gave me today?
Those were the add-ons, but the Freiburg contract also has add-ons.
What add-ons?
20% and.
Okay,
I
so,
guess
yeah.
maybe a simpler question, not trying to do it, is what, these numbers were presented a month ago.
Yes.
And they have changed. What was presented a month ago as the numbers?
In simple numbers, what was presented a month ago was that we projected, comparing apples to apples, that the tuition cost per student for the Freiburg Academy contract was around 26 grand per student, and that the tuition cost for the Kennett contract was around 28 grand per student.
Yeah,
Just
actually,
in round numbers.
And this currently, and again, it might not be perfect apples to apples of today, because there's new changes, but the current one as of today is 30. So we're looking at 38 today, new Kennett contract is at 28.
28.
And Freiburg is 26.
Yeah.
Give or take, the numbers change. Okay.
I think, Michael, I think it's an excellent point, and the maintenance, to Keith Henrich's point, the maintenance piece of it can be significant. And that was something that I think that the Finance Committee didn't necessarily understand the full impact of at the time of the original presentation. And as I understand it, right now, it's not necessarily clear that that Conway is offering a different situation than the one that we're already in, which is that there's a 20-year-old building that has necessary maintenance needs, and that, as I understand it, not being a part of the negotiating team, that the Conway School Board's position is that those maintenance needs should be handled in the way that they're currently handled, so that Conway does the maintenance and then bills the sending communities. So there could be significant exposure above that $28,000 per student tuition estimate.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
And it's also based on a 5-year capital improvement plan, which is referenced in the contract, but we haven't seen that yet.
Right, so just to be, to catch folks up, if you haven't been at recent meetings, we reached agreements with both Freiburg and Conway. And when we got the actual written contract from Conway last week, the actual formula looked different than we had agreed to in writing via email. So we had everything in writing. So it was quite surprising to us. So we spent the last week going back and forth trying to clarify that. So that is ultimately what we're waiting on. But the main difference of opinion is whether or not that capital improvement plan fee will be included in the formula or not. It was our understanding it is. We have that in writing. They confirmed it with us. But they have a different understanding. And so we are sorting that out at the moment. But that being said, Amy was kind enough today to share with part of the contract with Conway. They had said that they would reference a capital improvement plan, and we had yet to see that. So with the help of Amy, we just received that today. And I'll just share what Amy had shared with me, which is that from their facilities committee, while it's a high projection of the cost for the next 5 years, totaling $3,800,000. So based on the contract language, and we've broken out over 5 years, about $760,000 per year. So then the annual contribution would be billed to the districts, including Conway, based on enrollment percentages. So that will change the ultimate number, which is why we're not sitting here tonight with a definite final number, because we are still waiting to get confirmation that this is an actual real final draft, and actually to sort out that final administrative detail with them. So I can tell you we have been very aggressive about it, and we are hoping that we will have resolution tonight, which is why we have moved the contract forward, because we had already approved it on the 11th under the terms as we had written on the following the conversation. Does that reflect what has happened? Okay.
Would you mind repeating the numbers, but just a little bit slower?
Oh, sure, yes. Do you want the numbers about the capital improvement plan?
Yeah, repeat what you said at the beginning about the changes, but just a little slower.
So we're waiting the final draft, but we have a draft I just literally received today. And the projection over the next 5 years totals $3.8 million. So based on the contract language, that would be broken out over 5 years, about $760,000 per year. And the annual contribution would be billed to districts, including Conway, based on enrollment percentages. So if all Jackson students attended Kennett, Jackson would make up 2.75% of total enrollment, making the annual contribution approximately $20,900. If you break this out by the 17 students, it would add $1,229. Yeah.
Cost per pupil.
I guess one last thing. I guess, make sure I understand it from what I was trying to get at. We've talked a lot about the contracts and negotiating. Is there anything to get into the minutia there that wasn't useful, I think, for all of us to understand, but we're currently at 38,000. Kennett is at 28, and again, questionable. Freiburg's 26. And I don't know if you know this, but we don't anticipate Kennett to go anywhere near the currently 28, we don't, it's $1,200, we don't anticipate getting anywhere near the 38K. So i.e., we're looking at the savings per pupil, if it were the 28, which it's not, again, at 10,000 for Ken and 12,000 for Frank.
Yes, yeah. Thank you.
How's it?
And actually, part of it is we've been over these numbers so many times with so many presentations. It is good for you all to ask us because we're so used to having them. We usually have them. So something I just want to jump on the open enrollment piece. Something for those who are following. I want to just highlight for the body here tonight is that we have not just been working on these contracts. In addition to this, and we gave a fairly lengthy presentation on it, which you can see, and we're happy to talk to you about, we have an issue of open enrollment in the state that is actually being put forth by within several bills at the moment. And so open enrollment would allow students from any district to attend other districts. And your home resident district is required to pay for you to go to that district if the district is an open enrollment district. Under current law, districts have to choose to become an open enrollment district, but there are two bills that are progressing through fast track, right, literally the 29th of January, and there's another hearing on February 12th, so they may be law by the time our town meeting comes, which would mandate open enrollment across the state. And why this matters for our town is because we have been working on these contracts, and in tandem, we have this potential situation where open enrollment becomes law. And for a while, the calculation was that the sending district would pay 80% of their per pupil cost. The latest iteration of one of the laws that is being considered is 100% of your per pupil cost. So for Jackson, which is a very high per pupil cost district, that is a pretty significant change and development. So we are watching these hearings and we are in close contact with our attorney and with the SAU because the landscape is literally shifting day by day. And it will compare greatly with numbers for what the Conway contract would offer and what the Freiburg contract would offer.
Thanks, Jess. Michael, just to circle back and to your observation, kind of in summary, both of the contracts that we are planning to offer to the community an opportunity to vote on would represent a substantial cost savings per student from our current situation. So that's good news. But the other thing that the board has talked a lot about and that we worry a lot about is that the community we really want the community to understand very clearly that you will have a chance to vote yes or no on each of the contracts. And so the town could approve both contracts, in which case families would have the option to send their kid where they wanted. You could approve one contract or the other contract or neither of the contracts. So that's just something that I hope that people will spread far and wide. Conceptually, sometimes people can be used to the idea of an either or. This isn't one of those situations. The town is going to have the opportunity to vote yes or no on each of the contracts, and we could have a situation where we have two contracts, we could have one contract, or we could have no contracts.
So Jerry, I'm going to let you speak again, but I would like to caution you because we are your neighbors and we are civil servants, and the people up here on both sides of me work very hard and have put in countless hours to do work, and we are not enemies. So if you have something constructive to ask or to share, I invite you. But if you're going to come up and try to argue or badger or derail the meeting, I'm going to stop you, okay?
Clarifying question on your statement about the contract language versus the estimates for the capital improvement fund with Conway. Is the language in the contract set at this point in time, which obligates the town to contribute money to a joint sending town fund for capital improvements at Conway?
We approved language, yes.
So what you're confused about is the estimates for the money in that contract, that contract would obligate us to.
I want to be clear, we're not confused about anything. What we have is a discrepancy because we came to an agreement that we put in writing, and then we received the contract. It said something different, so we're trying to clear that up.
So that's my question.
Yeah.
Was the contract language changed, or was the number proposed by the contract
So
changed?
we had in writing a response from Conway, an agreement for what the formula would be, which included the capital improvement plan. And when we received the contract on what day was it, the 29th? Amy walked it into us, a hard copy. We looked at it, and there was a discrepancy. So we went back, we handed it to our attorney, and we said, hey, this is a discrepancy. This isn't about negotiating, we're not changing terms. Please get this cleared up. So at this point, we are still trying to sort that out with them.
What is the discrepancy?
So I can tell you. So we had a formula that we agreed upon, which let me just be crystal clear about this because we are not confused about this. So on the 11th of November, we had a conversation after many negotiations with Conway, and the agreement we came to, just so that I use the exact language, DOE 25 and ADMA plus 13% instead of the 10%, which we had discussed in an oral conversation, plus CIP, plus CPI, not to exceed 20%. That is our understanding. We received an email back from them confirming that understanding, and we have proceeded under that. We presented that when we presented to the town, at which they were present. Okay? And then when we received the contract, they took the capital improvement plan clause out as a separate clause. So we looked at it, very surprised. You can see the record. If there was a video last month, you could see it. We were wondering really what happened. We explained it in the meeting, and we said, obviously this is an administrative oversight. We are going to just send it to the attorney, let them sort it out. They can clean that up. So we are waiting for that to happen.
So it's the same capital improvement language, it's just taken out where it was in the contract?
Instead of being capped by 20%, it's separate. So one of the main conversations we had with them, especially as it came down to the wire, was that we wanted a cap because we were, while all this is happening, there are tandem efforts. And so one of the efforts we've been paying attention to is that there are a number of costs that, while it may appear to some people, it looks like we can control. We actually are not in the room voting when something like the roof gets decided upon in Conway. But because of other decisions our board has made previously, we are held to them, we're legally responsible for them. So that is what happened.
So my question is there any money in the 26-27 school budget that includes money going to Conway for capital improvements?
I would defer to you, Mike. I believe there is, under the current contract.
Yeah, the current contract,
Yeah.
there's equal out of that.
So the new contract with Conway would begin 27-28.
Correct.
So there's plenty of time to figure out what the numbers for that school year might be for the budget.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so for people who maybe were a little confused like me with the different initials referenced, you know,
Sorry about that.
the basic conversation, no, you were being exactly accurate, but the basic conversation relates to Conway's legitimate need to do upkeep and repairs on the 20-year-old building at Kennett High School, and how to fund that. And having suffered this this sort of unexpected $104,000 cost for the roof this year, the Jackson School Board feels that it's likely that the capital improvement needs of that 20-year-old building are going to be substantial over the next 5 years. And we're worried about the current wording of the contract, which essentially doesn't have any cap on the amount of money that the town of Jackson could be obligated to contribute to that. And so it's been the school board's position that there should be a cap on how much money we would have to contribute. We're willing to contribute, we think that's fair and just, but we don't want the current language where there's no cap and there's no control to persist. And so that's when Jess is saying there was a disagreement and we're trying to iron it out, we felt as though we had very clear understanding that Conway was in agreement, that there should be a cap and that the citizens of Jackson should be protected from unexpected costs. You know, maybe there's asbestos that has to be remediated or something very expensive like that. And now it's not as clear that Conway agrees with those initial terms. So that's something that we're trying to work on in the hopes that there aren't any surprise big bills like this coming up in the future. But that said, I'm mindful of the fact that this is a budget hearing, and I want to make sure that the townspeople who have questions to ask about the budget presentation have a chance to ask them. So I want to recommend that we move on from the contracts.
And while we're inviting folks up to the microphone, I do just want to highlight that one of the things that we are planning are, we do have our next school board meeting on February 24th, but because of how complicated and complex and how ever-changing all of this is, we have several, what we're calling sort of coffee chats coming up where you can sit with two of us board members to ask questions. We can show you things. We can happily go over contract terms, anything you'd like between now and annual meeting. So, and why we decided to do that is because there is so much information, and in meetings like this, like what I would like to do right now is just show you all of these documents, but I know this is not the appropriate time, so I'm gonna hold myself back. But I invite you to join us so that we can show you these at any point. Please come ask questions about the budget.
Phew. Emily Benson, Jackson. So, couple quick things. First of all, if you could go to slide 6, because on the printout, the Whitney Center thing is cut off.
Unfortunately, it's cut.
Oh, it's cut off.
Yeah, but I can see it on my screen, and so I can read those columns to you. So the original dollars was 0. The updated dollars is 58,713. The original percentage is 0. The new percentage is 1.4%. And I can say more if you have questions about all that.
Well, now I have to think about that.
Okay.
So I might get back to you on that.
All right.
So then my next question is more sort of a process thing. Are we going to be going through the budget sort of section by section at this meeting? Just, I'm thinking what we had for the town budget here and we sort of went down.
Sure, we can go through whatever folks want to do. What I was thinking was that we would get through this part and then we could do highlights.
Okay.
You know, but if you want to go line by line, this is your meeting essentially.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
And then on the warrant articles, are those all going to be voted on at the school district meeting or is somebody going to the election day?
So the plan is they would be March 5th,
They would be all
on March 5th. And that's a discussion we've had because we thought, do we break them up? But we wanted to just keep it as simple as possible for folks so they could just see it and understand it as best as possible.
Okay.
So, yes, so that is our understanding.
Great.
So, yes. Courtney?
Courtney Wrigley, Jackson, and I'm just trying to learn through this process. So I have a totally random question which might be addressed if we were to go through section by section, but I know with budgets and recently over the years, special education costs increasing, very difficult, like we know, for a school board to control, but also health insurance. And that had been a topic over the past few years, especially with SAU 9 providing health insurance and the large amount they had to take on. But I was just impressed / question, like how our page, I don't know, but it's the summary that row 211 health insurance is actually down. And just knowing my own household, both of our employers had like a 30% increase in our personal, and our 3% salary increase is not really covering all these things. So just going to the high cost of living and then just some of these uncontrollable costs that we often see in budgets, and just impressed / would love us to learn a little bit more if that was just because of personnel not being added in, or if there was a drop, or if there was any context that the SAU 9 folks could share with us about what we would expect with health insurance.
Michael explained this to me, and I can't recreate it nearly as well as the way he explained it. So, Michael, if you'd be willing.
Yeah, so the page you're referencing is the summary by object. So each section will be the chart of accounts represents a different way to slice and dice the data. So this one specifically breaks it out into, you know, benefit categories. So yes, there's a decrease. Part of that is due to census changes. The draft budget for 27, or the proposed budget for 27, is a maximum increase of 12.5% over the current rate, which is actually even higher than what was in the 26 adopted budget. So to be honest, it is kind of an anomaly that that line has actually gone down. So mostly due to personnel changes.
I would like to say we're still participating in a subcommittee of the SAU to continue to look at health insurance. It's awesome that the SAU is being really forward-leaning on that and looking at different options going forward, because that's going to continue to be an issue.
Yeah, and to Courtney, to your point, and also to Michael's point, we were really happily surprised that our health insurance costs, for various reasons, netted out to more or less neutral year on year. But other districts or others, other school budgets saw increases more like between 20 and 40%. And so I don't expect that to be the circumstance moving forward. I think on a per individual level, health insurance costs are up a great deal. And it was just a happy anomaly that we were protected from that this year. But yeah, to Nicole's point, there is an SAU-wide committee that's working on that. It's a huge concern for all of the school districts in the state, frankly. And Jackson is participating in that SAU committee.
All right, so what I'm going to ask you to do is maybe the finance committee, maybe you could give us some of the highlights from the budget prep season and changes that were made and direction that was given, because I think that's part of why the board feels it can stand behind this budget. Yes.
Just like I think will help clarify. The rate for health insurance is going up, and it's going up projected a maximum of 12.5% next year. Our actual costs have gone down, but that's irregardless of the rate increase.
Thank you.
James and Melinda are about to share.
Yeah. Hold on. So if you look at page 1, it pretty much goes through what the changes are.
So Melinda is bringing us past the slide deck to the document entitled Jackson School Board or School District FY27 Proposed Budget Executive Summary. And so what you can see is that our budget last year was $3,970,978, and what we're proposing this year is $4,066,000. What that represents is a 2.41% increase year on year. One thing just to contextualize this, I took a look at the other proposed budgets from some of our comparable schools. Conway's is we're the lowest year-on-year increase of all of the schools that I looked at. Conway's is the next lowest at 2.64% increase, but they also, part of the way they got there is they trimmed $500,000 from their student instruction budget. The SAU 9 budget goes up 4.5%. Bartlett's done a great job. Their budget is only going up 3.76%. Albany's going up 15% almost, and Chatham going up 35%. So among the neighbor members that we care about and work with in our community, the Jackson increase is sort of the smallest. And so if you go back to this document, you can see a summary of personnel cost, health insurance, special ed. We've seen a really big, one of the reasons why it's been referred to tonight is we've seen a really big increase in the special ed needs just in the last 2 years' budget. So our budget went from $0 to $629,000 between 25 and 26. But we actually had a decrease in the need in the community, and so we're seeing a little bit of a decrease in that budget line, so we're really happy to see that. I don't feel like I just took over.
It's fine, we're just basically reading what's here. But I should point out that Erin has looked so carefully at the grammar school budget and proposed changes that some of us felt that she really shouldn't make, that they were too deep, and they would affect the instructional quality of the program, especially if we're going to be facing open enrollment. But you'll see on the bottom of page 1, we're not going to have a part-time PE teacher. We will not be hiring a reading specialist. We are taking away the salaries for substitute teachers. All subbing will be done within the building. So, I mean, there was a fine-tooth comb that you went over things with, and I thought you did a great job. But we did not go the step further that we thought would really be too far. And it wouldn't really affect the budget. You could cut something by $10,000 here or $3,000 there, and overall, it would be more of a detriment than it would improve. It wouldn't improve things.
And if I could just speak to that, I've been here a number of years where there's a question of whether or not we should reduce teachers or reduce staff or things like that. And what we're finding, especially under the Defined Leadership of Erin, is that we have a thriving and active and engaged community of students and parents. And if that is how you measure success, that's a really easy thing to measure. If you are someone who measures success with test scores or things like that, we are really looking great on that front too. And so the efforts that are being made and the money that's being spent is being noticed by a lot of folks. And it's one of the reasons that we have had to, in addition to these contract negotiations, spend countless hours on open enrollment, because it is a very complicated piece of law that is going to have an effect on us whether we like it or not, because that is something that we didn't make, but we have to respond to. And it comes with it both threats and opportunities, because there are threats of what it would cost to send students out of our district if they so choose to leave us. And it's one of the reasons we keep reiterating that we want every family and child and student to know that we want them here in Jackson and that we want to educate them regardless of where they go, and we want to be thoughtful about that. But it's also why we are thinking about how do we keep, not only keeping students here, but if they're going, why are they going, right? We've started to really push on that. But we have an opportunity with our elementary school because we have inquiries all the time about students joining us from out of the district. So that is a potential improvement that we might be able to make to our budget, because even 5 students, if we were to add them in a thoughtful way, if we have to do it anyway, that is something that we have to look at. Whether we do it or not will be decided, but it's something we've had to engage with.
Yes, Sarah Clemens. When you say that, will they be paying full budget? Because I know we did have tuition student at one point that only, I believe, was only paying $10,000, and we're paying 40 whatever for our students. If someone comes in under this open enrollment program, they would have to pay the full tuition, yes?
No. So it is, I want to be very clear, it is not decided yet, and we are not the ones who will decide it, but we are watching it. And currently what is put forth that may be decided in the upcoming weeks is a sending district pays 100% of their per pupil cost. So for Jackson, whose per pupil cost is $50,000,
$50,300 something.
so our per pupil cost is about $50,000. There are many districts whose per pupil cost is significantly less than that. That is what we would get if we accepted them, if we were an open enrollment school. And that's something you all need to be aware of, as we've had to make ourselves aware of, because it's more than the $10,000 that we've been accepting for tuition students. And by the way, Sarah, I do just want to point out that we've been looking at that tuition policy because we decided we really need to tie that to something logical and rational. So that policy is under review. But as far as open enrollment goes, we don't necessarily get to make those rules. But right now, it's per pupil cost of the sending district, not the receiving.
So it'd be 30,000, between 25 to 35,000 is a good rubric in terms of other per pupil costs in the valley. So if there are kids from other schools in the valley that come here, and if this passes, then there would be tuition into Jackson at that rate.
But it doesn't have to just be from the valley.
It could be anywhere. Yeah, just as an example, it could be anywhere in the state.
And so our building holds X students. I don't know anymore because of the additions and stuff. So how many students could possibly come to Jackson with the enrollment, say, that we have right now?
So that's one of the things we've been looking at, and I think physically it could hold 55, but there are a lot of factors that go into deciding how many students make sense for us to have in a given year. Is that a fair representation
Just
of
as
that?
an example, Sarah, we have paired classrooms, so each teacher is teaching 2 grades at the same time. And so what we've all experienced in this community is kind of lumpy grades where there are a lot of students who are in 5th grade this year and maybe not so many in 4th. So I think one of the things that Jess is saying is that our total capacity might be to add an additional 30 students, but if for some reason all 30 of them wanted to be in the 5th grade at the same time, that might not be something that Aaron would be able to accommodate.
And we have to make sure we leave spots for our own students from town. Yeah, we can't just fill it all up because, we'll be.
Yes. Penny?
I assume that if that did happen, if this does pass at the state level, then teachers' kids who are currently for Jackson would benefit by getting money from their sending down.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's become open enrollment. And I think what's really important is that right now, we were one of the first towns, we had a whole presentation on open enrollment, I don't remember, it feels like a year ago, it was 2 months ago or something like this, to talk about, saying, hey, we really need to be aware of this, and to talk about that this could also be an economic benefit for Jackson, and how do we understand it, especially if our town is talking about how can we do this, how can we make sure that our school is thriving, and the fact that we have had inquiries many times, constantly, from families saying we'd love to send our kids, what is the mechanism? The truth of the matter is that it's been really complicated to follow what's happening, and it's changing all the time. And so at this point, we have a warrant article. One of the warrant articles is because a couple of weeks ago, the move was that to become an open enrollment school, you had to pass a warrant article. So we were ready to do that, and that's what that warrant article is. This could literally all change in the next 2 weeks, and it could be that you actually don't adopt, everyone has to be, and it's 100%. So what we've done is try to be ready for anything that happens in that coming time and being really adaptable, working to say we would like to be able to receive students, and we'd like to be able to do it in a way that maintains our school culture and character, as well as supports the way that with the teachers that we have. So for example, that we wouldn't just pull a huge flux of kids who come in, in 1 grade. So that's something that we're really watching. And so all of us might see that change, right? When we're all sitting here in February, when we're sitting here in March, we might be like, guess what, everybody, open enrollment's no longer a warrant article because that's the way it goes.
And I just want to clarify that as far as the current law goes, one of the reasons we moved forth the warrant article at all is because at the moment, the law states that you have to choose to become an open enrollment district in order to have any control over the inflow or out of flow. If you become an open enrollment district, it allows you to control the number of students in and out. So, for example, under the current statute, we could set outflow of students at 0. And we could set inflow at, I think, 0, something like that. So the legislature has figured out that many districts are going to their attorneys and saying, how do we navigate this where we want to keep the culture and the character of our community, and we want to make sure that we're providing the same education we've always done, but we have this decision that's come down for us from the legislature. So that might all literally change within days. Peter.
Hi. If that could go up here?
Yeah.
If you
Can
could,
you
just
hear
so you can hear, if folks can hear.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead and
Okay,
let us know.
thanks. I mean, I have to say, this open enrollment thing has been a hot mess. We all know that, right? It's really hard to take our legislature seriously, quite honestly, when they have abrogated their responsibility in 2 Supreme Court cases to fund an adequate education. So it's a real challenge for you all. I completely understand that. But what I guess what I would say is, let's not look at this as a cash grab. This is not a revenue source for us. This town doesn't have a revenue problem when it comes to funding anything in town. The town's been great about that. So I would say let's not look at it through that lens. I mean, we've been discounting, quite honestly, discounting non-resident students for quite a while here. That's fine. I don't always agree with it, but I would, depending on what happens, whether they're going to pay full boat or we're going to have to make up the difference, is to really think about a strong cap about how we cap the number of students. And I would say at this point, we would probably, I would say no more than 10% of our current student resident population would be allowed under this program. It might change in the next 2 weeks. The other thing I would say, having seen this before, is anytime the New Hampshire legislature fast tracks something, it's usually not good. So just everybody beware. I feel for you. I feel for all of us, because we can't make decisions. Between that and your car inspections, good luck.
I would say, the car inspections, what I would say to build on what you just said, Peter, like that's something that we've been thinking a lot about in the warrant article that we put forth. Instead of having those caps, is to say to work with the principal and the school so that we can adapt, right? Instead of creating this number that's in a warrant article, which is absurd to think that you're gonna pass a warrant article with the number and it's gonna be nuanced enough. It's like, let's do it based on what's really happening. And I think that the school board, what we present is that we don't see it as a cash cow, because I think we need to be reasonable, but at the same time, we need to acknowledge that there could be capital. And I think that that is not a bad thing when we're looking at what our budget is. So it's about balancing that and again, doing it under the leadership that we have.
The last thing, if I just may, just say is, there is also a thought out there that towns voting for open enrollment, if they vote for open enrollment, that becomes a tacit support of open enrollment, even though you're forced into it. Some people in state government say, see, everybody voted for it, it's got to be good, even though you have to vote for it.
Yeah, I mean,
or against it.
I think we're well aware of our pawn status in this situation.
Absolutely.
You know, and we do invite you all to, if you were interested, go back and look at our own enrollment presentation. Look at many hours we put into this. We have debated those numbers, and we have gone back and forth many times. And you know, ultimately, we think it should not be us dictating the number of students. It should be up to the educators who are in these classrooms, because the students have to come first. So thank you for that. We'll start here. We'll go over.
Just a question, if people choose to bring their children here, do they provide the transportation?
Yes.
We don't have to do that.
So under the current law, the school does not need to provide transportation. If someone chooses open enrollment, they provide their own transportation, unless, I mean, schools can choose to do that, but that is not currently. The other thing is special education comes from the receiving district, not from from the sending district, not the receiving district. So if we were to send a student out, we are still responsible for that. So here's an example. If we had a student that tomorrow opted to go to a school that had a district that opted for open enrollment already, I think there are only 1 or 2 of them at the moment, that student could choose to do that. We would still be responsible for their special education costs. We would definitely not have a lot to say over how those are administered in their new school, in their new environment. And so it's one of the concerns that I personally have, and I think the board shares, which is that we want to keep costs low. But at the same time, because of that mandate about providing adequate education, we want to provide, I think we want to provide more than an adequate education, but one of our main roles as a board is to take responsibility for special education and to provide that oversight. And if students are leaving us, we cannot do that. And that's why open enrollment is, it's quite honestly a bit terrifying to most of us, because we can see the perils that we're facing. Yes, Mr. Doherty.
If Article 7 does not pass, it does not change the idea of someone going to Freiburg as their option, is that correct?
Let's just catch up. Article 7.
So Article 7, you're referring to the Freiburg Academy contract article, and
Yes.
that article refers to the town approving a contract in which the district would pay for students to attend under that tuition contract. Should the town vote that down, we would not have a contract with them. Private individuals and families can always do whatever they want with that or without it. So the short answer is, of course, yes.
So it would be as it is now, people could still go to Freiburg if they wanted to.
Right,
But what changes is that our district is not paying for it, and that we're not paying for an adequate education for our students through high school. So what these warrant articles do is meet an addressed need and interest from our voters, and furthermore from families with current and future high school students who are asking to have the option. And also, what our board has done is provide those options in, per Michael's question earlier, a more fiscally responsible way compared to what we have.
And to be clear, ultimately, you all get that vote.
So the board doesn't look to fund it from any other part of the budget?
We would? No.
The board will not look to fund it?
No.
Okay.
Same thing if the Kennett contract is not passed.
No. If it is not passed, we would have to make a decision. Do we do anything else? And at this point, we haven't had those discussions. We believe in leaving the power in your hands, which is why we've tried to be very transparent in getting information out. And ultimately, it is up to you all. So, next question?
I have no idea what part of the budget we're talking about, not talking about, but in regards to open enrollment, my question is, who is obligated to make the payments under the current laws of open enrollment? And is that being considered as a change in the new laws? Because my current understanding is that if you have the proper language in place with contract obligations between open enrollment schools, in the current law, they can, a family can choose to send their kid to an open enrollment school. But the school boards can have policy in place that would obligate the family to make that tuition payment, not the school district. Is that a correct understanding of the current open?
That hasn't been what we've been advised. A contract would trump open enrollment. So for example, if we have a contract with Conway, then those agreed upon terms would
No, I'm
be.
talking about in terms of open enrollment. So if we become an open enrollment school under the current laws, we could make a policy saying that, yes, parents can choose to send their children to a willing receiving school, but we could have policies that would obligate the family to make that payment, and not the school district make that payment.
Right, so that's what I was talking about before. Today, as of February 5th, the current law on open enrollment is that we can, if we are to become an open enrollment district, we can set a percentage or a number at which we will accept or students coming in or leaving. So we could set it actually at 0 leaving the district. So that means that if a student wanted to go under open enrollment currently, that we would not be paying for them to do that if we had that policy in place. If we don't have that policy in place, if we are not an open enrollment district under today's law, then that student would be able to go to an open enrollment school, and we have to just pay that tuition. That was a court case that came down in October.
So just to clarify, I think what Jess is saying is, no, you are not correct. The means for the community of Jackson to not fund outgoing students would not be through a policy saying we're not going to fund them. It would be through a policy setting the cap of outgoing students at 0.
Right. And it's through why we put it on the warrant is because it's got to be stated explicitly right now as of today for you all to decide upon. Next week, it could be that it's mandatory open enrollment across the state, and we won't actually have a say in it. We don't know. Literally, we don't know. Yes?
And when you say we would have to pay that tuition, we would have to pay our per pupil cost.
As it's written today, yes. Today, it's 80% of that. Under the new law, it would be 100% of the per pupil cost. There is some discussion about what that per pupil cost might get defined as, and there are a number of districts that are putting some testimony forward about how that might not make sense if you're a district that doesn't have, for example, a high school, but you're paying your per pupil cost for your elementary school for a high school. But none of that has been decided, which is why this is so challenging.
But
Yes.
I think Peter's observation is probably right on the money, that this has been, every week, this conversation changes, and, you know, what it's actually gonna end up looking like in some final form, to me, seems impossible to guess at this point. But I'm curious to hear what question Michael has.
Less of a question, more of a comment and request personally. It's up to everyone. I think the open enrollment discussion is super interesting and worth having, but this is a budget meeting. And I don't know, my personal request to the group is could we focus on the budget first with questions and then ask other questions? There's a personal citizen.
And just to be clear, why we're entertaining questions is because this is a very unusual year, and so we want to make sure that you all are able to get what you need from these meetings. So, but I do hear what you're saying, Michael. So if we can try to do what we can to get through the budget for 26, 27.
We still have a whole meeting.
Yeah, we still have a whole meeting after this. So, so we would appreciate questions pertinent to the budget then. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Yetta Glazier, Jackson. The slide on the big screen is at the moment much easier for me to like parse through about the budget than the line by line. And so I wanted to better understand a couple things about what we can control, and I know you've kind of reviewed this already, but so that I can be crystal clear. So the parts of the budget that we really have control over and the parts of the budget that we don't. So the JGS operations and the JGS maintenance are part of what we vote on as a town. Is that correct?
We vote on
Yeah,
all.
we vote on all of it. And, yeah, and I think a good clarification might be that Jerry made a good point. Our board is ultimately, at some point, technically in control of everything. Because if we wanted to, we could come forward and say, we're just not going to fund special education, and we let the lawsuits come, right? But what another word that might fit would be a number of our costs, most of them, as we're finding as we've spent many hours budgeteering, is that our costs are fixed due to things that have already been decided. So for example, we have in place a very clear and coherent system for special education. That means our board, it would be inappropriate for us to try to step in and try to micromanage an individual cost for a service. When it comes to the tuition contracts, they are written in black and white. They tell us what we must do, how we must do it, things like that. When it comes to the JGS operations budget, that's where we have the most ability to make changes, where there's the most flexibility, because we could ultimately come in and say, Amy, we'd like you to work with your principal and get rid of 4 staff members, right?
Okay.
Things like that.
So, but we don't have a say in the budget vote for the high school. That is a Conway School District and Town of Conway budget vote. Is that correct?
Their budget, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I should do a better job of asking questions instead of seeing them. Do we get to vote on the cost increases for Bartlett from year to year?
No, we're bound by the terms of the contract.
Okay. And do we get to vote on the SAU services changes from year to year?
We vote at the SAU level. but we're
Okay,
not
so we
voting on
have
it here.
a say in the increase and the changes at the SAU? Okay.
Proportional say. We don't have we're not the deciders, we have a vote inside of a body of vote.
Every member of the SAU, every member of a board within SAU 9 has a vote on the SAU 9 board.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to thank you for all of your work and all of the work on the high school options, and I wanted to just share from a budgeting perspective that yes, I am in the position of having the privilege to send our daughter to Freiburg, and I have been so impressed. I really hope that it becomes a choice for any family in Jackson that wants to make that choice, and not just a choice for the families who can financially make that choice. And I also just wanted to share that I really hope, and I guess I wanted to ask this as a question if I can, but if the Conway contract is not able to be sufficiently agreed upon before our town vote, is it something that can be voted on later?
Yes.
So is there a scenario where, as a school board, you may choose to actually remove Article 8 because you don't, as a board, feel good about the option that's been presented to you, but with the other understanding as a community that we could add that contract in later under better terms?
Our goal is to get a contract to the voters, because that's what we've been asked to do and we've promised you we would try to do. So it would be a very difficult thing to try to pull a contract back because of what people might think. So it doesn't mean we won't do it. We've done lots of hard things, but it would be a very complicated decision, in part because we think the vote should be in your hands. And unless we really have to, we're going to just try to keep moving that forward. You know, we actually agreed, we have an agreement with Conway already, and we have it in writing. We think it's an error if it ends up one way or another. We have to make a decision about whether we'll accept their version, our version, or we can come with a compromise. Either way, we will be very clear about what comes next.
I just appreciate, as I've sat in these meetings over years and months following this, that the Jackson School Board is only one part of this negotiating process, and you only have control over your role in this negotiating process. And I hope that a bad contract for the town of Jackson doesn't come to a vote because the other party hasn't been able to follow the timeline. And I want everybody to hear, and what I just heard, that we can all vote on it as a town, and it still will be a vote as a town to enter that contract or not, but it can happen at a later date. And so as far as like how this budget is impacted by that contract with Conway, I hope that you hear me, at least as one person, saying, don't bring a bad contract for the sake of the timeline. I think we all are really intelligent, and we've followed this closely for 5 years. Like, we can hold out another year or whatever it takes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, that's a very good point. Do you want to, yeah, just so folks are clear, any contracts that would be voted on would be for 2027. They are not impacting this year's budget.
The proposed budget. Oh, yeah. Thank
So
you.
that's good clarification. Thank you, Amy. Yes.
I'm Jackson Breslin. I just have a question, a little bit different, but thank you all for your great work. Does any current contract or future contract have a stipulation of the academic performance of any of the schools? Is there an option? Should the scores of the school go down?
We did incorporate minimum requirements, and should things change, that we would have options. So I know that, especially with Freiburg, that was the Freiburg contract is available, as is, I think actually the Conway versions are, all of them are available because we opened up the record, but you'll see that that was a topic of conversation to make sure that there were minimum standards for everything, and that we would have some agency in saying how our education would be administered.
But they're not related to test scores.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
But it's not tied to test scores.
I think that in the future, presentation would be really helpful to compare the academic achievements from the schools, and perhaps some information how the current
Yes, thank you. And I'm going to ask folks to, hopefully we can get to the warrant article soon, but I'm going to invite you to the High School Options website, because we have, of late, in recent weeks and months, tried to actually distill a lot of the meetings and videos and things into sort of one-pagers or two-pagers, so you could see side by side. So for example, if you want to look at career tech offerings at both places, if you want to look at class offerings at both places, things like that. And there's so much information, but we're trying to just give high-level understandings to folks. And we have talked about it in some recent meetings, but please feel free to, after the meeting or at any time, reach out if there's a specific thing you're looking for. Because I think we've gathered that information, probably spoken about it. It's just a matter of when is appropriate to talk about it again. So,
I want to,
yeah.
Jess, I just want to follow on one topic. You know, not to belabor things, but there's been a lot of conversation today about costs in the upcoming budget that feel more directly under the control of the Jackson School Board and other costs that feel less directly under the control of the Jackson School Board. And instead of you know, sort of discussing minutia and facts, I want to kind of bring you into the budget committee meetings that Melinda and I had with Aaron and Amy and Michael and others on the SAU, and just share with you that in a real way, when the Jackson School Board gets notice in December that our high school costs are going to go up by $250,000, what that means in that budget committee room is that Melinda and I are asking Erin to cut her costs. And what that means for our kids and our teachers is that Erin is saying, you know, I know that you need a new rug for your classroom, but you can't buy that this year. Or I know you're using a computer that's third hand and 10 years out of date, but we have to cut the budget for computers. And so I understand that there are people who see that conversation about costs in our control and out of our control as kind of an us versus them. And I just want to share with you that I think on the budget committee, we don't feel that way at all, but we do see Erin having to be in a position in order to bring you a budget with the smallest increase of any of the schools in our catchment area. In order to do that, what that means in a real way is Erin is telling her teachers and our kids in this community, no, you're going to have story hour on a carpet that's 10 years old and you can't buy a new one. And so that's why that concept of things that are in our control and less in our control feels very important and very, very important for the community to understand.
Okay, so with that, what I'd like to do is go over an explanation of the warrant articles, so
I
that.
have one more question about the budget.
Okay.
So the money, the operating budget reflects the current tuition contract with Conrad.
Yes.
For the 26, 27 school year.
Yes.
Is there any money in this operating budget for tuition increase at Fiber Academy in the 26, 27 school year?
No, we are not doing that.
We don't have a contract.
What's that?
We don't have a contract, we would not do that.
So the warrant article for Fiber Academy would be commencing for the school year 27, 28?
Yes, same time as Kenny would be. So, yeah, there's no.
That's a big clarification.
Yep.
Thank you.
No. Okay, so hopefully you all have seen some of these before and it won't be too complicated. I'm just going to direct your attention to page 5. There's an explanation of the warrant articles. Then towards the end of the packet, it's actually the last document before the information about the tours of the high schools and things like that. There are actually the warrant article, there's the warrant article language. So I'm just going to start with an explanation of the warrant articles and then we can take it from there. So Article 1 is operating budget. The operating budget includes all of our costs, utilities, curricular supplies, materials, technology, transportation, tuition for middle and high school students, and administrative costs. Ongoing maintenance and repairs are included as well. The total operating budget proposed by the Jackson School Board is $4,066,810, with $21,000 being offset from various grants. As far as the special education, Article 2 is the Special Education Capital Reserve Fund, And this is a topic that we come back to each year, and it's especially important in years where we've seen how our budget can balloon really quickly. So that is our budget for unanticipated special education costs. The target amount for a school district such as Jackson would be about $250,000 in that account. And we currently have about $115,613 in the reserve fund. So the recommendation from the Finance Committee and the board and our staff is $50,000 for that fund. Article 3 is the Whitney Maintenance Trust Fund. As part of our agreement with the Whitney Center, we recommend raising and appropriating $3,000 to be added to this fund. This is meant to help address issues with maintaining the Whitney Center, and there's currently about $49,706 in this reserve fund. Article 4 is our General Maintenance Trust Fund. The reserve fund is used to pay for capital improvements that are typically too big for the operating budget, or obviously for any emergency or unanticipated reasons. Currently, we have $51,448 in this fund, and we are recommending adding $25,000 to it. Article 5 is our School Bus Capital Reserve Fund. The reserve fund is used to pay for the purchase of buses. We're recommending adding $15,000 to the current amount of $70,601 in this fund, so that you would be approving $15,000 there. Article 6 is the open enrollment article. Adopting open enrollment provisions under the RSA allows school districts to set policies around how many non-resident students may attend an open enrollment school, and to place limits on how many resident students may attend school in another district under open enrollment. For today, per current law, the sending resident district is required to pay the receiving open enrollment school a tuition amount equal to at least 80% of the sending district's average cost per pupil. And we wanted to highlight for you all, so you can follow these as well, if you like to watch Senate hearings like I do. HB 1817 and 101, I think it's one of them's been renumbered. They're currently moving quickly through the New Hampshire legislature, and they are looking to establish open enrollment universally across all public schools in the states. So we've talked about this a lot this evening. If there are further questions, we can talk about it. But hearings on these bills, I think the next hearing will be on February 12th. And we are obviously monitoring this very closely. Article 7 would be about a tuition agreement between the Jackson School District and Freiburg Academy. This article would allow the Jackson School Board to ratify and approve the tuition agreement between the Jackson School District and Freiburg Academy for a term of 10 school years, beginning July 1, 2027, and ending on June 30th, for the purpose of educating Jackson students in grades 9 through 12 who wish to attend Freiburg Academy. Article 8 is a tuition agreement between the Jackson School District and Conway School District. This article allows the Jackson School Board to ratify the tuition agreement with a term of 5 school years, beginning September 2027, and you should know that term was what Conway asked for, and ending on June 30th, 2032, for the purpose of educating Jackson students in grades 9 through 12 who wish to attend Kennett High School. Article 9, the last article, is a tuition agreement between the Jackson School District and Bartlett School District, because in addition to these other Conway contracts and open enrollment, we have been negotiating with Bartlett for a contract. This article allows the Jackson School Board to ratify the 3-year tuition agreement between the Bartlett School District and the Jackson School District for the education of Jackson's middle school students, beginning July 1, 2026. So that would be for this July, not July 27. That is an explanation of the warrant articles. Yes?
Question on the Bartlett contract. Is there any substantial changes to the contract being proposed?
I don't think so. No, essentially, we agreed to keep the terms the same.
My only comment towards that is those terms I think have always been very beneficial to Jackson. We pay a small rent in that contract, which is just kind of a skin in the game kind of contract towards our capital costs. But our primary costs on that are based on their tuition, their per student cost is what we pay Bartlett. So it seems to be a pretty fair contract.
Thank you. I think the only thing that came out of that is we've tried to be more clear about how to renew the contract in the future and how changes will be made, and also we've tried to reinforce and tighten up how we might collaborate and work together better on committees and you know, we put a lot of emphasis on them pulling back extracurriculars and sports, and we really appreciate that they've made that effort, even though I know it was quite difficult for them. Yes?
Is there any alternative to the Bartlett Middle School?
We're only putting forth this contract for approval. We're only putting forth this contract as a town. Obviously, as an individual, you would have other opportunities.
How does the board feel about Article 6, designating, in regards to designating the Jackson Grammar School?
I mean, at this point, I mean, honestly, at this point, we are just watching. I mean, but we've also put forth we've decided that if, in the current law, as it stands today, what we all decided at our last meeting was to move forward with a warrant article so that we would become an open enrollment school. Now, that is changing. So, again, that's the reason that it's presented the way it is here, is we will have updates, and we're here to be transparent about that and have a conversation. So, I think we're watching very closely.
But as I understood it, when we decided to recommend this as a warrant article to the town, essentially the situation was if we wanted Erin to be able to have a say in kind of maintaining school culture, we as a town would have to have open enrollment. If we chose to do nothing and didn't have a warrant article about open enrollment, then those decisions are taken out of our hands.
It was a proactive move, not necessarily our endorsement of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, part of why we moved on it, we really were the first ones to do it, because and there was a lot of controversy about whether we should even bring it up and talk about it, and we felt very strongly that we need to be educated about it. You all need to be educated about it. It's here, whether we like it or not, and we want to make thoughtful choices about it, and we can only do that if we have enough time to be thoughtful, and we're not constantly reacting to things. So, you know, that being said, I think one thing it has done is forced districts and schools to think about the quality of the services they're providing, and I think that that's a good thing for students. I don't think necessarily open enrollment's a good thing. That is to be decided, but in many of the years I've both personally educated children and been in school board situations, I think it's easy to become complacent because it can be very challenging, but I think it is really exciting to think about how can we do it better, and this has forced some conversations there, and for that reason I do see a tiny silver lining, despite a lot of the pain it's brought. Yes, Jerry?
Towards the obligations and costs involved with open enrollment, I understand the concept that with not allowing any students out, then the district would be obligated to any costs associated with that, correct? And that's a way to guard the town against that. And if we have that policy in place, right, very soon after we adopt it that's kind of protecting town policy for what the state might do in the future. So if we pass open enrollment and you folks come up with good rules on how to execute the open enrollment, we'd be in a good position for when the state actually forces, if and when the state actually forces open enrollment on us. So in being proactive, it might be a good idea for the town to actually pass open enrollment and start putting policies in place to guard the town to any extent that we want to control it. We obviously want to control those costs, but maybe not at a net zero or whatever it is, but the board being active in that, it is challenging, so thank you for that.
Yes, Bill?
Bill Terry Jackson. Just a process question. The warrant articles don't indicate whether or not you recommend them. Is that something you're going to do now as a voting process here? Do you have a second meeting that's going to occur? Are you going to suspend this meeting, go to a regular meeting, have a vote, or what is your plan on recommendation?
That's a great question. Yeah. So what we will do is we will, when you folks are finished with your questions and comments, we will close the hearing, and then we will go back to our public meeting. We actually have a non-public right after this, so we will hopefully have a very brief non-public, and then we will go back into our meeting, and then we will, at that point, we would then make our recommendations. Yes.
If you're just closing soon with comments, I just wanted to reiterate to everybody, February 19th, 8:30 to 9:30 in the morning with 2 school board members. This is a casual conversation, not a school board meeting, but it's also a chance for you to talk with families and parents to learn about the experience of what it's like to have educating school kids, K-12 right now, and preschool. I've got 3 kids. Happy to share what that's like and our thoughts and the experience that we are having at Jackson Grammar School, which is incredible. And I want you all to feel proud of that as well as townspeople. So that is the 19th. And then the follow-up to that is the same kind of open conversation right before your next meeting, school board, February 24th from 5 to 6. Again, 2 school board members, not an official meeting, but a chance to talk with your neighbors and with other with parents to hear what's happening and what our thoughts are for some of these conversations about open enrollment, about high school options. We'd be happy to share.
Yes.
And I did notice that, starting I think next week, I know Freiburg has tours available. And Canton as well.
Yes. Yes.
So those are open to, not necessarily parents, correct?
They're open to everyone. And
anybody who wants to look at either school, they could.
yeah, and we really strongly encourage you all to do that because this is a decision that ultimately will be yours, and we want it to be an informed, educated decision. And so we are very grateful to both Kevin and to Joe at Kennett and at Freiburg Academy who are opening their doors. Essentially, they are welcoming folks in to come in and see what you can see, do what you want to do, and you know, we're trying to come up with some creative ways for people to feel like they understand what's happening, and we know that there's a lot coming at you. So, thank you, Amy, for setting those up, by the way, and for Courtney for setting up the coffee talks. All right. So with that, we are going to close the public hearing. This is, of course, not the end of the conversation. Please feel free, join us at our other meetings. Our meeting is continuing, so by all means, please stay. But yeah, but at that, I'm going to close the public hearing. Thank you. And now we will go back into our regular meeting, and I will entertain a motion to go into a non-public.
I make a motion on non-public pursuant to legal advice.
Yeah, apologies. So thank you for catching that. So we